you diversify it, you have the expertise which you cannot be able to have immediately or afford, and you can deliver things very quickly. But also you build your brand because you leverage on big brands.
Welcome to our Decade of Greatness. Let's share with you our 10-year journey of growth, learning, and great success. Relax and enjoy.
National School of Government will work with other organs of the state, like the Human Sciences Research Council, to conduct these audits. The adoption and implementation of the framework gives renewed momentum to the drive that commenced with the start of this administration to build a public sector that is ethical, professional, and efficient. The framework should be welcomed by the country's public servants as an important tool for their own progression as they work on the front line to deliver to the promise of a better life for every South African. And this is how they too will be able to put our people first through the Batho Pele principle that is widely accepted in government service. Thank you very much.
School of Government is a very important government department, especially since 2020, when government changed the national priorities. The priority number one is the building state capacity. Partnerships are very key for us in our ability to survive. If you partner, you expand the depth of what you can do, you diversify it, you have the expertise which you cannot be able to have immediately or afford, and you can deliver things very quickly. But also you build your brand because you leverage on big brands.
Welcome to our Decade of Greatness. Let's share with you our 10-year journey of growth, learning, and great success. Relax and enjoy.
National School of Government will work with other organs of the state, like the Human Sciences Research Council, to conduct these audits. The adoption and implementation of the framework gives renewed momentum to the drive that commenced with the start of this administration to build a public sector that is ethical, professional, and efficient. The framework should be welcomed by the country's public servants as an important tool for their own progression as they work on the front line to deliver to the promise of a better life for every South African. And this is how they too will be able to put our people first through the Batupele principle that is widely accepted in government service. Thank you very much.
School of Government is a very important government department, especially since 2020, when government changed the national priorities. The priority number one is building state capacity. Partnerships are very key for us in our ability to survive. If you partner, you expand the depth of what you can do, you diversify it, you have the expertise which you cannot be able to have immediately or afford, and you can deliver things very quickly. But also you build your brand because you leverage on big brands.
Welcome to our Decade of Greatness. Let's share with you our 10-year journey of growth, learning, and great success. Relax and enjoy.
National School of Government will work with other organs of the state, like the Human Sciences Research Council, to conduct these audits. The adoption and implementation of the framework gives renewed momentum to the drive that commenced with the start of this administration to build a public sector that is ethical, professional, and efficient. The framework should be welcomed by the country's public servants as an important tool for their own progression as they work on the front line to deliver to the promise of a better life for every South African. And this is how they too will be able to put our people first through the Batubele principle that is widely accepted in government service. Thank you very much.
School of Government is a very important government department, especially since 2020, when government changed the national priorities. The priority number one is building state capacity. Partnerships are very key for us in our ability to survive. If you partner, you expand the depth of what you can do, you diversify it, you have the expertise which you cannot be able to have immediately or afford, and you can deliver things very quickly. But also you build your brand because you leverage on big brands.
Welcome to our Decade of Greatness. Let's share with you our 10-year journey of growth, learning, and great success. Relax and enjoy.
National School of Government will work with other organs of the state, like the Human Sciences Research Council, to conduct these audits. The adoption and implementation of the framework gives renewed momentum to the drive that commenced with the start of this administration to build a public sector that is ethical, professional, and efficient. The framework should be welcomed by the country's public servants as an important tool for their own progression as they work on the front line to deliver to the promise of a better life for every South African. And this is how they too will be able to put our people first through the Batupele principle that is widely accepted in government service. Thank you very much.
School of Government is a very important government department, especially since 2020, when government changed the national priorities. The priority number one is building state capacity. Partnerships are very key for us in our ability to survive. If you partner, you expand the depth of what you can do, you diversify it, you have the expertise which you cannot be able to have immediately or afford, and you can deliver things very quickly. But also you build your brand because you leverage on big brands.
Welcome to our Decade of Greatness. Let's share with you our 10-year journey of growth, learning, and great success. Relax and enjoy.
National School of Government will work with other organs of the state, like the Human Sciences Research Council, to conduct these audits. The adoption and implementation of the framework gives renewed momentum to the drive that commenced with the start of this administration to build a public sector that is ethical, professional, and efficient. The framework should be welcomed by the country's public servants as an important tool for their own progression as they work on the front line to deliver to the promise of a better life for every South African. And this is how they too will be able to put our people first through the Batupele principle that is widely accepted in government service. Thank you very much.
School of Government is a very important government department, especially since 2020, when government changed the national priorities. The priority number one is building state capacity. Partnerships are very key for us in our ability to survive. If you partner, you expand the depth of what you can do, you diversify it, you have the expertise which you cannot be able to have immediately or afford, and you can deliver things very quickly. But also you build your brand because you leverage on big brand.
Here. It works? Okay.
我让那个谁给我拿一下。怎么影响？Hello.
Can I just quickly test? Sorry. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Okay. Yeah.
There we go.
Hey. 好的。它是有那个什么啊？有翻篇的是。啊，有了。啊。是这个吧？是的，是的，没问题。
Welcome to our Decade of Greatness. Let's share with you our 10-year journey of growth, learning, and growth.
还让你们坐这儿啊？
不是那个张先生啊，那个我们坐这儿拍个照，我们就走。
坐这儿了啊。
于老师说的很实在。
别介。我坐哪儿合适呢？请我到那上去讲是吧？好的。好的。
A very good morning to all of you colleagues. Welcome to Prof. Zhang Jun. Our speaker will be delivering the masterclass today, and also to the Director General from the Department of Tourism. Welcome and thank you for honoring this event to become a respondent. Mine is a very simple task. Mine is to run the program, so I don't have a lot to say, but I'd like to welcome you all to this masterclass on carrying forward traditional Chinese culture and promoting mutual learning among civilizations. It's quite a very interesting topic, particularly for those who are involved in decolonization studies or decolonization discourse. You may ask yourself, why are we gathered here today to discuss Chinese tradition, modern culture and civilization? The world has developed mostly based on single civilization. But we appreciate that the world actually is made up of multiple civilizations. And if the world is to develop, then we need to embrace different traditions and different civilizations. This is what President Xi Jinping actually has introduced in the United Nations and call it the Global Civilizational Initiative, to say that all civilizations, all knowledge matters. In South Africa and Africa, mostly would say the use of indigenous knowledge systems in teaching or also in development. And this is what the topic calls for today. With those remarks, colleagues, I would like to call on the acting principal, Dr. Lakela Kaunda, to come and give an official opening and welcome to this masterclass. Thank you. DDG Kaunda.
非常感谢。那么我在这儿呢，我今天呢是一个非常简单的任务，就是主持介绍一下我们这一节的课程培训。我们非常荣幸的邀请到了北京行政管理学院张军教授张校长的中国代表团。我们呢首先呢向他们表示欢迎。可能在座的人可能会问，就是说为什么我们在这个地方要讲传承弘扬中国传统文化？那么我们实际上生活在这样一个世界，文明是相互交融的，互相借鉴的。正如习近平主席呢提到的，在这个联合国提到这个全球文明倡议，讲到呢，任何文明呢都是相互依赖的、相互依从的。所以呢，我们在非洲本土，我们经常用的一个词呢，叫做非洲本土文化。我们也在传承我们的本土文化，传承我们的本土语言。这就是为什么我们认为应该拥抱多样化的这个世界，拥抱多样化的文化。这就是为什么我们在这里的原因。好了，接下来有请我们的这个执行院长呢讲话。
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and a warm welcome to the NSG. To Prof. Zhang and the delegation. Also a warm welcome to the DG, Mr. Taraga, the DG, Department of Tourism, our neighbor here on the outside. We are really happy to be hosting the Beijing Administration Institute today as part of further strengthening partnerships and cooperation between the National School of Government and various institutions of higher learning in many countries, but especially in China. South Africa and China enjoy a very warm, comprehensive, and strategic partnerships in various levels and various fields of cooperation. So we are very happy that this particular meeting is part of further strengthening those deep relations between the two countries. And we've just had a very fruitful discussion this morning between the two schools. And we signed an MOU, which is aimed at cementing the partnerships between the NSG and the BAI. So we are all very happy that we'll be able to take forward this partnership after this session, and collaboration, exchanges, cultural exchanges, research and development, and a lot of other areas of cooperation between the National School of Government and the BAI. So it's a very productive morning, which will now be cemented by this masterclass, Civilizations and Cultures in Work, and the way we as public servants, it informs the way we carry out our duties, as well as the ideological outlook that we all possess. You cannot divorce it from the cultural outlook. And Prof. Zhang just explained to us, he's an expert in this field. So we are very, very happy to hear from him, to hear how civilizations influence governance and influence the way governments work. Without further ado, let me take it back to Bongani to introduce our guest, and then so that we can get cracking with the masterclass. Thank you.
非常感谢刚才的介绍。那么我们今天呢也非常高兴的邀请到了北京行政管理学院的张校长一行。我们呢大家都知道，南非呢在这个发展过程中呢，我们跟世界很多国家都建立了友好关系，尤其是我们跟中国建立了全面的战略合作关系。我们之间的关系呢发展非常迅速，而且深入到各个层面、各个领域都有很深的合作。事实上呢，今天早上呢，我们跟北京行政管理学院代表团呢，我们已经 进行了深入的交流，而且我们签署了合作备忘录。那么在这个基础上，我们将会进一步加强夯实两校之间的合作，乃至于两国之间的交流合作。所以呢，这些都是非常重要的。我们就像本甘里前面刚才讲过的一样，这个文明是需要互学互鉴的。然后呢，这种文明构成了我们的生活方式，也对我们的政府管理造成了非常大的影响。不管是我们在形成一个世界观的时候呢，我们需要了解各种的意识形态、各种的文化。所以我们很高兴能请到张军教授呢，在这儿呢给我们讲这个中国的传统文化。好的，谢谢大家。
Okay, thank you very much. I would like now to call on Professor Zhang Jun to come and deliver the lecture, Caring for Traditional Chinese Culture and Promoting Mutual Learning Among World Civilizations. Prof. Zhang Jun, the floor is yours.
那么接下来呢，我们有请张军教授呢给我们讲的呢叫做传承弘扬中国传统文化，促进世界文明交流互鉴。好，有请张教授。
好的，这儿我这儿知道这儿有个 PPT 吗？哦，可以用这个。
如果我们中国代表团不介意的话，我就直接做同声传译好了。
好，
时间快一点，行吗？
好吧。
Okay, I'm trying to do simultaneous interpreting because you don't understand Chinese, do you? Okay, then that's fine. I will speak in English. So you don't have to listen to Chinese. 好，有请。
尊敬的南非政府学院的各位同仁。
Dear leaders from the 可以继续。Dear leaders of the government.
刚才呢，这个我们校长介绍。
We had some exchanges with the principal. And today, my topic would be about Chinese culture. And the topic is called promoting and inheriting Chinese culture civilizations. And both socialization and it's important for us to exchange such exchanges, especially the cultural exchanges. Well, speaking of that, we should understand each other. Just now, I said that, dear colleagues, and this colleague
就是一个典型的传统文化的一种表达。
traditional way
我不知道我们南非是怎么样
I don't know
来理解这句话的。
How do you understand
我们的同仁
when we are
实际
saying
上
colleagues
就是讲的志同道合
we
的人。
share the same ideas, we share the same
大家呢都
aspiration,
是在
and we
从事
work
着
together. That's
干
why
部
we
的核心
call
事业
colleagues.
因此呢，我
So
们互相呢被
we
称为同仁。
That's why we become colleagues.
这个刚才我
And
们的
just
主任
now,
讲了，
as Dr.
习近
Principal
平
said,
总书记呢在今年年
President
初
Xi Jinping at the beginning of this year
在北京举行的中
In
国
Beijing,
共产党和世界政党
the
高层对话会上
top
提出来
leaders
了
conference of the political
携
parties,
手同行
and he
现代化
actually
之路的主题
proposed
演讲，
that we should work
提出
together
来了 全
towards
全世界的共同的倡议。
modernization.
而在
And
这个
he
倡导
also
中呢，
proposed the global
强调
civilization
要
initiative,
尊重世
focusing
界文
on
化的多样性，
respecting the diversity of the world culture,
要坚持
and also
平
stick
等
to
互鉴、对话
the
包容，
principle of
以文化交流
equity
超越文化隔阂，要实现文化的互鉴、
and
文化的
learning from
互相
each
之
other.
间的、互相之间的一种交流。
And that is kind of an exchange between each other.
我们来南非，首先想了解的就是我们南非的文化。那么按照我们中国的有句老话呢，叫做“一先取之，必先喻之”。 所以说呢，我先简单的对我们中国传统文化呢做一个简单的一个介绍。
我把这一段补一下啊。Sorry, I just want to also catch up with what he said earlier, and he said that President Xi Jinping proposed the Global Civilization Initiative. The first of what he advocated is we advocate the respect for the diversity of civilizations. Countries need to uphold the principle of equality, mutual learning, dialogue, and inclusiveness among civilizations, and let cultural exchanges translate estrangement, mutual learning, translate clashes and coexistence, translate feelings of superiority. And before we actually come here, we also did some homework about the traditional culture here in South Africa. And next, well, including like our Labola, Kosa beer, ancestor worship, and the traditional therapist. And next, we are going to talk about the Chinese culture.
中国的传统文化呢，博大精深。
Chinese culture has a long history.
我呢只能讲。
And Chinese civilization is profound, extensive. Here, I can only briefly introduce the basics. And the basic character of the traditional Chinese culture cover 3 areas. The first is that we have a unique value different from the other cultures. And the second, we are going to talk about the 3 systems or tenets. And I'm also going to talk about the spirit of the Chinese nation and what is the impact and influence on our social development. And the first, let me talk from the difference different from the other Western cultures. When we are talking about this, I think I just want to give you a small example, small case. In the year 2011, 2021 actually, 2021. 这里有个翻页的。
这个翻页本在这儿，那我自己来吧。
Okay, there is a case study.
这个毒贩呢
when the Canadian national Robert Lobler, he was arrested and he was convinced of selling drugs.
非常普通的一个
It is actually an ordinary case.
但是呢，引起了
But
国际性的一个轩然大波。
It actually become the hot
以加拿大的总
topic
理为代表
in the Western media.
组织了
represented by the
27个国家
Canadian
对中国呢发出了通牒。
premier, and they actually gave the last warning to Chinese government.
影响很大的一
And it is quite an influential event, as you probably heard.
作为西方国家
And for Western countries, and they actually
否认
did not deny
犯了罪
that he is a criminal
法律的惩罚
and he
但
should
是
be
呢
punished.
他们还是对
However,
中国进行了指责。
They blamed
指责的理
China
由
for the
是中国
severe punishment
中国呢
because
人权状况太差，
they say that China has a bad record of human rights.
而更核心的理由呢是中
And
国
the other reason,
不尊重人的
they
生
said
命。
that Chinese government do not respect the lives.
那么怎么样看待这件事
And？how do we say this?
实际上，这个事情
Actually,
呢远远超出了政治范畴。
this
它是
is
一个文化
beyond
类
the political
所以
sphere.
我们要回
It
到
is
第一个问题，
also
就是
related to
文
the
化的
culture.
原点，
So that's why we want to come to the root of a culture.
也就是说，中国的
So
我
that
们
is
中
to
华
say,
民几千年来，
for
我们的最基
many
本的价值
thousand
观
years,
是
and
一
we
个
have
我们把它叫做
core
群体的
value.
价值观。
That is what we
这个
call
西方的价值
the
观，注重个体的价值观，应当说是
in
有
Western
本质区别的。
culture, it's individualism, and in China, the culture is collectivism.
中国人他
Oh,
认为人之所以
group
成为
centered.
人，中国
And
传统文化的思考是人
Chinese culture
与
take the
禽兽的
group-centric
区别在
perspective
什么地方？
and from a collective value system, and
从这
we
儿
think
来
that the basic
思考
that's
是什么？
different to us from the ordinary animals.
中国
And
有一个
because we have
著名的
thinking,
思想家就是荀子，
and one of the ancient
他
philosophy
曾经呢
shows,
提出来
and
一个
he
叫民
proposed
分使
that
群的这么一种理论。
a kind of 叫什么？
民分使群，明
Okay.
明确的明，民
Okay.
分使群。
Okay, these traditionals and form various groups.
简单的说，
To
就是
put
人
it simply,
力量没有牛马大，人的凶狠程度不如豺狼虎豹。
and actually it means that
可以
while
拿
we are not powerful,
战胜他们，
then the cows, tigers, and individually,
战胜他
however,
们的
we do it
最根本的
collectively.
原因在于人能够群，
If we can
人能够运用
combine
群体的力量。
and we can unite the people together, we can fight those fierce animals.
而人的这个群，如果
And
不
this
是一个不是一个无政府的，
human
又要产生分。分呢，就是指的我们在分配中啊，我们的老幼啊，男女老幼，我们要对他们在劳动分工上，我们对他们
And in terms of the labor, and we also have the distributions, and there should be a fair distribution, and so that we can share those benefits by combining the group.
这就是中国人最基本的
And that is
认
our
为的
basic
人的最
idea,
本质的东西。
because the essence is Tao.
对，道德是最
And
最本质的
moral
是道德。
Moral is very important.
在
The
中国人认
ethnic
为，在中国
to
人的
Chinese are very
思想里头，
important.
人
In
的生
our
命
thinking,
是具有双
people's
属性的。
lives have a double meaning.
一种生命呢是自然
And
生命，
One
一个
is
生
the
命呢是
natural
道德
life.
生命。
The other is the moral life.
所以在中国人认为，
So for
这
Chinese,
两种生命中，道德
these
生命
two
是高
lives,
于自然生命。
moral life is even higher than
中国
your
古代
physical
著
flesh
名的
life.
思想家
And
叫孟子，
another
孟子
famous
提出来了
philosophy
舍
meant
生取义的这么一种思
said
想。
that for the justice, we can sacrifice
他这
our
样讲，
lives.
他说
He
自然生
said
命
that the
我们
natural
想要得
life
到，
is
道德生命
easy
我们同
to
样需要。
get. And
但是如果
the moral
两
life
种生
is
命
also
必须要舍
important.
弃一个的时
If
候，
we have to choose
我
from
们会舍
one,
去生
we
命，
prefer
舍去自然
that
生命，
moral life
获取道德。
instead of that physical life.
这就是中国人的
That
生命
is
观，就是把道德
how
生命
we
看得比自然
look
生命
at
更加的
life.
重要。
To put it in other words, moral lives is even higher
当然，
than the physical life.
如果反过来
Of，course,
从个人
in
主义的
enough
价值
from
观出
another
发的话，
perspective, from the
那么他对
individualism
生命的
outlook,
理解恐怕就只有一个，那就
and
是自
there
然
is
生命。
only one understanding of
因此，
natural
他们
life.
的生命观呢，可能
So
就是自然生命观，
People
而中国人的生命观
say
是
maybe
生
Westerns
命
or the they will just value the individual life or the physical life at that level, and
因此呢，
while the
在
Chinese
死
have
刑制度
two
而言，
levels of life.
中国人并不是滥杀的，中国
So
人都是建立在一个前提之上，
we do not
这个
want
人他的罪状已经达到
we
了，
do not
他的
want
道
to
德
kill.
生命已经死亡，我们才会剥夺他的自然生命。
So in that particular case, and we think by selling those drugs, and so that a lot of people were suffering, and then his moral life is at the end, and so his physical life should also come to the end.
同样，中国人如果他的道德是高尚的，
So
我们对
if
他的自然生命
one's
是高度
life
重视的。比如我们中国人认为人生最伟大，他的人生三不朽。哪三不朽呢？太上立德，一个道德高尚的人，他的思想，他的生命永存。第二其次立功，一个为民族立下丰功伟业的人，他的生命永存。第三个，为我们的民族留下机遇良言，留下思想宝库的，他的生命永存。这是中国人的生命观。第一个就是道德，道德高尚的人；第二是立功的人，立大功的人。
Okay. Sorry, because there are a lot of ancient words. Even 4 words can contain a lot of sentences. So I'm going to stop and explain. And in China, we actually value 3 kind of people. And the first is who are morally high people, or who are very ethnical. 等一下，我把这个。 A very ethnical person, and the second is those who made great contributions to the country or to the group, and the third 第三部分是
立言
啊
对立
okay
言
and the third kind of people or heroes we value very much are those who left famous quotes, famous speeches, who had impact on people's lives.
所以说呢，中国人的生命观跟西方的生命观，应当说呢，它存在着巨大的文化的差异性。那么，有时候我们要问谁对谁错呢？实际上，没有什么对和错的问题。西方人有对生命的态度和理解，中国人有对生命的态度和理解，应当说是需要互相尊重的。这样子，我们的世界呢才会显得和谐。
Okay, so in terms of the outlook or how you value about life, Chinese have different ideas maybe with Westerners. There's no right or wrong. It's a way of thinking. It's a way of tradition. And so we live in a world that we should respect each other, the culture, and so that we can live in harmony. Sorry, how can somebody help to move to the next slide?
是不是
Gani,
变了？
why is not working? Where is the remote?
哦，是对着这边吗？
Maybe you should control from there or what?
能翻吗？能往过翻吗？
Okay, next.
可以了。OK，
Okay.
可以啊。这是我讲的第一个问题。第二个呢，
This is the first part. The
中
second
国
part,
传
we were
统
talking
思维
about
方
ways
式
of thinking.
也
Chinese
具有
traditional
自己
way
的
of
特殊性。
thinking has its own unique
这里
character.
头呢
Here
放了两张图片，
we have two
大家
pictures
看一下。
here,
这边是
and
西洋的
the right side is the Western art, while on the left further side there is Chinese traditional art. If you can say,
不知道有什么感受？
I don't know what you feel about these two pictures.
实际上我们一看，
And if you
这
look
就是一个
at
人物画。
this,
我们看那边呢，我们看的好像是画的是竹子，
and this, while you say it's like a bamboo,
但实际上呢，它
however,
也是个人物画，
it's actually
它画的是中国。
also a Chinese
孔子有那么一句话叫“仁者乐山，智者乐水
Confucius. And Confucius says that the benevolent people love mountains,
在中国人
while
的眼里
the
头，
wise
一个
people
高
love
尚的
water.
一个君子，
So in China, a
他要像
good
山一样的
gentleman
那么的坚硬，
would
要像竹子
be
一样那么的挺拔，要
as
像竹子的
would be
竹
like a
心
mountain.
要有谦虚的精神，
So
就像竹节一样要有气节。
我们来解释一下啊。
嗯，
Okay, so this is actually a picture. While you say it's bamboo, it's actually also reflect the character of Chinese people. And because Confucius said that those people who love mountains are benevolent. Those people who love water are wise people, have wisdom. And here is a reflection with the bamboo. With the bamboo, you can say it's upright. It shows man's character should be honest, should be integrated, and at the same time should be modest. And this one here shows like a mountain, and it also reflects to be a real gentleman. And you should have open-minded, you are determined, and you are like a mountain.
从这两幅画里头，
From those two
可以反映
pictures,
出
you can
中
see
国人 与西方人的思维方式的不同。
The way of
中国人的思
thinking
维方式啊，
is
西方人的
different.
思维方式呢是正向，以眼睛为视角的一种正向的思维
And
方
the
式。
Westerners will look at the world from their eyes.
我想画一个
kind
人，
of a
我就要
positive.
前面就要有一个人。
If I want
我
to
我
draw
我
a
测我
picture
来照着人来
of
画。
a person, that person must stand in front of me. I need to see from my own eyes.
画的很真实，
And
把这个画得非常的真实。
they can paint a very real, vivid picture of that person who is in front of him.
但中国人的画
However,
呢是
in
像山
China,
不像山，
we drive
水
a
不像水。
mountain or whatever water. It doesn't look exactly like the mountain. It doesn't look exactly like the river.
这个呢反映出了一种中国人的叫悟性的思维方式。
So that is the difference in China traditional culture. It's kind of an intuitive thinking.
所以说呢，中国人的思维方式呢，它不是以眼见为实的，它是在眼见的背后发现内在的一些东西。
So what he reflects is not what he sees, but the things behind. He wants to see the things behind the real truth.
第三点呢，从文化特征上来看，大家看一眼。
And also, the third part is we have different cultural features.
我们大家都知道，西方的文
We
明，
all know
它呢
the
是
Western-
在对于自然界的打交道
When
中
they are dealing with
逐渐的
nature.
产生发展的。比如
and
说，
developed their ideas.
我们大家
for
使用的
example-
英文，英文里头文化 culture。
So we
culture
all
呢
know
它
about
加上了字
culture.
根，它的字根加上呢，它就耕种的意思。实际上，它就体现出来了文化的本质，就是人对自然的改造。
So that culture is a reflect of the transformation by human beings to the nature.
那么，我们在学习的过程中，接受西方的文化的时候，我们也接受，比如说文化的发展经历了石器文明、青铜器文明、铁器文明、蒸汽文明，到今天的信息化文明，这实际上都是人类呢改造世界对象的工具的改变，随着它工具的水平的提升，也体现了人的人民的水平的提升。
So we actually also learn and accept Western culture. And because the development of a culture is a long learning history, and starting from like the Stone Age and to right now the information technology age, and during this process, and it is kind of how we use tools to change the world.
而中国的文化呢，它不是的，它不是处理是人与对象之间的关系，而主要是人与人之间的关系。啊，人与人之间的关系越发展越发达，人们的文明水平就会越高。
Okay, basically, Western culture emphasizes the pursuit of a truth, focusing on the relationship between individual and external object, leading to advanced science and technology like what we mentioned just now from the Stone Age to the information technology era. And while Chinese culture emphasizes the pursuit of goodness, focusing on the interpersonal relationships, leading to the development of ethic thinking.
这可能出现了一种历史的现象，也就是说，西方它的文明的发展呢，科学技术呢相对比较发达，因为呢它在不断的在与对象的改造之中，啊，而中国人呢，他的文明呢主要是人与人之间的关系，因此呢，中国文化里头呢，伦理思想呢显得就更为发达一些。
So that is why maybe for the Westerners, because they pay much attention to the science and technology, and so they are quite advanced in terms of that area, while Chinese people tend to think a lot, thinking about the relationship between people, between groups, and that's why in this we had a lot of philosophers, and we pay more attention to this.
第四点呢，从文化的理念上，实际上也是一个非常清晰的一种文化差异。就西方人呢，他是信仰上帝的， 而中华民族的文化呢，不信仰上帝，它呢信仰祖宗。
Okay, and the fourth aspect is cultural beliefs. Western's culture believes in God, and Chinese culture actually worship ancestors. And we do not, a lot of Chinese people do not
所以从建筑上，大家可
believe
以，我们呢出去旅游，
Christianity
经常能够看到的。西方呢教堂很多，而中国呢，实际上你到我们乡土里头呢，你会发现我们有非常多的乡土上的，就是我们的宗祠文化，我们宗祠。
And so that's why if you say like here or you go to Europe, you'll find, or even to United States, you will find a lot of churches. While if you go to China, and you will find a lot of temples like that one, which is, say, we have a lot of different surnames like Mr. John, Mr. Lee, and that John's family will put a temple to commemorate all their ancestors. So that's how it looks like there.
你翻译的很好啊。实际上宗祠和教堂虽然呢形制很不一样，但是我个人的感受呢，它们的功能都具有相似性。一个呢是具有教化功能的，是对我们的一代一代的人具有思想上的教化。第二个呢，它具有规范功能，对于我们每个人家族，尤其是我们中国传统文化，我们的家族呢，对他们呢具有道德规范的这么一个作用。同时，中国人呢，因为这种祖宗崇拜啊，造成了具有强烈的一种呢这个族群的凝聚力，有姓张的、姓王的、姓李的，他们具有强烈的这么一种这个凝聚力。同时呢，还有一个很重要的功能呢，就调节他们之间的矛盾。如果家族呢出现了矛盾，实际上是在宗祠里头就可以呢很好的解决了。所以在中国人心目里头，去上法院普通人的时候。
So basically, okay now. So whether it's temple or churches, they actually play the similar role to carry on what our previous generations believed, and to carry out that culture. It have the similar function, and to educate our kids, our generations, and to keep the good part of the way of doing things and the way of thinking things. So in China, because we believe in the ancestors, and that is actually a kind of a bond to unite the groups, for example, and like I'll use the Chinese example, like Zhang's family or Li's family, and here if we say like Mandela's family or Ramaphosa's family, and whoever share that kind of a surname, will have a strong bond together.
这是我简单的讲一讲我们传统文化的它的一些基本的特质，与其他的民族呢，它还是非常独特的。
So that is the unique part of the Chinese culture, differentiated from the Western culture, and that was the first part. And now we move to the second part.
中华民族几千年来的文化
For many generations, years, we also have a profound tradition.
我们经常讲叫儒释道三
And
大理论体系，
we
儒家的、
have
道家的、
Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism, which
那么
laid the
最为主
foundation
要的
for the
也
Chinese
是我重点给大家
culture.
汇报呢，
And
就是
what
儒家
I
的
would like to share with
思想
you
体
is
系
the basic tenets on the
它是我们中
Confucianism,
华民
which is
族
the
的
most
主干
important
的
one.
主流的文化。那么儒家的文化思想
The
非常的
Confucius
庞大，
is
简
also
单的
very
给大家讲
profound.
这么几个字。
And we just want to mention
第一个
just
字
a few
就叫人。
simple words. And the first is, we just give you some
又不行，
basic words. Can somebody help to next slide?
不行，不动是吧？老不动。
Well, Doesn't move. We have somebody who can help. Oh, okay.
开始了 OK
Okay, the first word is 仁. 仁 means benevolence.
仁是我们儒家思想的核心。仁这个字，大家看看，如果我们懂汉字的，它是用中国的字呢，这是一个会意字，一个人字旁，一个二，实际上就是它的思想本质就是人与人之间的关系，就叫仁。
Okay, the Chinese 仁, which means benevolent or love. It looks like this. Okay, this part is like a person with 2 legs walking, and this is number 2. So that is to say the relationship between the people should carry the principle of benevolence or love.
儒家的创始人孔子讲，我们的道德最早从哪块去发掘呢？从人与人之间的关系中去发掘，而人与人之间最近的是谁的关系呢？我们儒家呢，他有句话呢，叫做食色性也，就从人本性来说，人最近的关系是夫妇之间的关系。
Okay, so how do we develop the impersonal relationship? In other words, between person to person, people to people, and the originator of or the creator of Confucianism is Confucius, and Confucius is a philosopher, and he studied the relationship, and he said that the relationship should start from a husband and a wife. And he had a famous saying is that the human beings, the essential character is food. 食色性也，是吧？
对。
Food, meal, and the relationship, husband and wife relationship compose the basic relationship.
夫妇之间的关系，
The relationship
我们呢
husband and wife.
我们今天经常会用一个字来表
We
达，
always
那就是
use
爱
one word, love.
啊。我们认为呢，
We
这是一个人间最美的一
That
种关
is
系
the。most beautiful relationship.
但是呢，在我们儒家看来，
However,
这只是一
for
个
Confucius,
小爱
this is a small
啊。我们现
version
在我
of
们中国
love.
人还互相称配偶为爱人。
And even right now, say like Chinese husband and wife call each other lover.
那么这种小的爱
And this, however, this is a small
是不
version
忽
of
视
love
的，人
and
类的
which
生
cannot
存
be
就是
neglected
建立在这种爱的基础上。
because people's
没有这种爱，就没有人类的繁衍。
without such kind of love, there will be no generations.
那么在这种爱的基础
And
上，
based on this kind
又
of
出现了另一
love,
种关系，
and
父母与
there
孩
are
子之间的关系。
further relationship, and then you because you
紧接
have
着就会
children
出现
and you become parents,
堂兄弟、表兄弟之间的关
and
系。
there are also brothers and sisters, and then you have cousins,
按照这种逻辑，
and from this
人越
kind,
来越多，这种关系越来越复杂。
this relationship become more and more comprehensive,
但是爱的
and
这种
more
关
more
系
extended.
逐
And
渐出现了擦的，
this love will also extend.
逐渐变得呢越来越淡化。
And but during the process of the extension of love, the more you further you go, that love will become weaker, right?
儒家意识到了
So
这个东西的严
Confucius
重性，
realized the restriction of this kind of love.
就人只有小爱，
So
没有大
people
爱。
only have a small version of love. There is no like what we call benevolence.
那么，儒家
So
摆在儒家的一个重要的使命就是怎么样让这种爱无差等的。
Confucius, and how do we have a kind of love that go beyond such kind of a relationship?
那么儒家就提出来了他的一个金法则，叫做忠恕之道。所
So
谓忠恕之道，忠者
then
己所欲而欲人，己所达而达人。所谓赎道，己所不欲，勿施于人。
okay, so this principle, okay, I must explain now because those words condensed in 4 words needs 4 full sentences, if not 4 paragraphs. Okay, basically the Confucius said that in order to get this kind of love, and we should think of our people, the others, the neighbors, and as ourselves. We should not do what, if you do not want people to do anything on you, don't do that kind of things to others. Okay, so basically it's kind of like a Ubuntu.
1993年，世界伦理大会上提出了全人类的这个就是这个普世伦理。这个普世伦理呢，就把己所无欲，勿施于人作为了人类共同应当遵循的道德准则。
Okay, in 1993, there was a global ethnic conference, and on that conference, and the delegates reached kind of a consensus, and to put this, what we called that principle just now, that if you do not want people to do anything on you, you should not do that kind of a thing to others. And also the principle of what we called the benevolent person designed to establish themselves, and doing so establish others. They design to succeed, and in doing so help others succeed.
那么这个呢，就是儒家对于人的思想的一个从小爱到大爱，它逐渐的通过这种忠恕之道，老吾老以及人之老，幼吾幼以及人之幼的这么一种逻辑，最终达到一种人与人之间的相互之间的关爱，这就叫泛爱，也实际上跟西方所提出来国外的思想就有异曲同工之妙。
Okay, this is actually the idea of how do you value the relationship between human beings, between people. And in other words, how do we live in common harmony is like Confucius repeatedly saying that what you do not want done to yourself, do not do to others. And respecting others and trying to live in harmony. It is actually similar to the Bible said that love your neighbors as you love yourself, right?
好，这是我简单的讲一下儒家的人的思想。那么儒家的人可以理解为叫人心，就是你的内心是善良的，但是呢，善良的内心要想让别人知道，那么需要通过外在的一个东西来体现出来，这个东西就是礼。
Okay, so that's basically the idea of the essential of benevolence. And however, to show that kind of benevolence, and you should demonstrate, because Confucius believe that naturally people are born to be good, to be kind. And what you need to do is to show your kindness to others.
在中国古代，在中国现在的孩子们，家喻户晓，都知道一个典故，叫孔融让梨。 而孔融让梨实际上就体现了中国人对礼的重视。
Okay, so to reflect that cover of kindness, and there is another word called propriety. That propriety, and we can tell you a story. In China, it is well known by everybody, and it's only 4 words: 孔融让梨. However, this 孔融让梨, I have to explain because it is a descendant of Confucius, who where he was only 7 or 8 years ago, 80 years when he was at that age, and the people give a lot of children the pears. Okay, and Kong Rong, being a descendant of Confucius, he said, okay, the bigger ones, you pick, all of you pick up the big ones, and the last one, give it to me, which will be the smallest.
在中国的礼中呢，礼具有2个层次。第一个层次呢是礼仪，是一种个人的行为规范。
Okay, and in China, and there are 2 layers of those propriety. Next slide, please.
我这里头呢，让大家看一下。
Okay, that is 礼。
对礼的一些场合，中国人的一些基本的要求。比如说，我们见到一个老人啊，背驼的一个老人，甚至是个瞎子，他的行为，他的外貌啊，显得呢，我们就显得不像我们这么精神了。但是中国人呢，我们的儒家要求，不能对这些人呢表现出任何的不屑，一定要对他们表达。
As you can see here, the li represents the code of conduct of people. Manifested as ethic, protocol, manners, and there are examples listed here. And when you are encountering people who are disabled, who are blind, and who are maybe have other dysfunction or who disabled, and you should also show respect, and you cannot look down upon them.
比如说在
For example, in the market, if you look at people who are doing hard work, and maybe they look dirty, and because of the hard work, you should also show respect to them. Because when we are sitting in the car, when we are, we should also respect. And you should not judge people by his look, by his clothes. For example, in one occasion, when I'm standing here in front of you, and you're not supposed to do it like this. You cannot point fingers because we think that is not polite. So there are similar ways talking about the manners and the protocols. And there's Chinese that when you stand, you should stand like a good standing person, and if you sit, and you should also sit up front. So in China, in the classroom, we would sit like this. We wouldn't. I'm not interested.
所以呢，我们这个后来称我们中国传统文化叫礼仪之邦，应当说。
So that is why we Chinese, well, at least Chinese call ourselves, we are a country of full of etiquettes or protocols, manners.
这种教育呢，从小就会孩子。
And this kind of tradition and culture, and the parents were telling the little children how to eat.
那么这是生活层面。
And this
礼还有制度层面。
is in part of the life.
我们今年
and there are also the ethics in the system.
中国的考古发现的时候
For example, if you do other things.
发现了一个墓葬，这个墓葬里面呢出土了金缕玉衣，那么我们就敢肯定，这个墓葬它是王侯以上。如果这个墓葬出土了9鼎8簋，那么我们可以肯定，这个墓它是一个皇帝级的墓。原因是这是由国家的制度、国家的礼仪所决定的。
Okay, and that kind of antique are also applied to different class of people, and in terms of and how you should dress yourselves, and for a certain level, and you should dress like that kind of dress to show that you are in that level. For example, if we now if we dig a tomb and we find a clothes with gold and jade, and we can judge that person is from a royal family.
包括这个皇帝
So emperors
使用的乐器，
the
包括皇
instruments
帝
they
呢
use
享受的美食，
and
包括
the
他的
food
享受的舞蹈等等，
and
这些呢都是有
dancing,
严格的礼仪上的。
and there are some protocols they should fit.
那么第二个讲
The
一下
second
呢，
part
我们中国人
we
的
are
一
going
种
to talk
人格
about
追求。中国人认为呢，人生追求
the
最高的人格
pursuit
标准，我们把它叫君子。
how to the pursuit of life, and the highest pursuit should be next slide, please. Next slide.
还是不行。哦，您这样就可以了。
在这儿吗？
好，这再往前一点，再往前一点。好的，是君子。
Okay. So the pursuit of life should be a real gentleman.
在中国人的对君子的要求呢是很高的，他是一种道德的典范，是我们每个人需要
actually
向他学习的。
Everybody should learn from that gentleman.
这里头呢，
It consists of appearance of
中国
behavior,
人对
whatever
君
he's
子的一些基本要
in
求。
every aspect of life.
大家看一看，实际上呢，都是以道德为标准的。
If you look at those and you will say, and what are the requirements to become a real gentleman? It's mainly the moral requirement.
所以呢，我们把它称为理想人格，因为啊，他对道德的要求太高了。所以说呢，
That is why we call it
是
ideal
理想。
personality.
现实中，我们也经常说很难看到。
In reality,
如此真实的
actually,
君子。
it's very rare to find this kind of gentleman.
但不耽误我们呢
Because the
努
standard
力
is
的
high.
去追求
But
这种
it
道德
doesn't
理想。
mean that we should not aim towards that. Okay, I think I think Nelson Mandela once said that I'm not a saint, but I'm trying my best to be on that way, right? I read Long Walk to Freedom. I think it was from that book.
那最后一个，第四个呢是儒家的，他的呢治理国家的思想，也就是他的以德治国的这么为政以德治国的思想。
And the last part is this kind of philosophy should be used to run a country, like a gentleman.
儒家呢是主张以德治国的，他的理论根基是人性本善。他认为呢，人皆可以为尧舜，人的本性都是善良。
So instead of rule of law, it's rule of ethics, rule of ethics, because Confucianism believe that all people are born to be kind, to be good, and what they need is to reflect this kindness to others.
那么，一个呢由好人组成的社会，那么用鞭子、用法治来进行治理的话呢，在儒家的眼里认为这是不人道的。如果说呢，社会上有些人走错了路，这个有些人呢，这个犯了一些错误，那么我们只要通过道德的规劝、道德的教育，就能够实现。
So traditionally, and Confucius believe that because all people are born to be good. If you rule by law, giving lots of punishment, and then it's not good. And if some people make some big mistakes, just let them correct their mistakes, and because they are born to be good.
儒家呢治理国家的还有一个重要的思想就是民本思想，儒家提出来了民贵君轻。
And the other principle or philosophy is that the people are above the emperor.
儒家同时也讲，
They also
可
believe
以
that
载舟，
people
也可以覆舟，
are like the water,
得民心者得天下。
while the emperors are like the boat. The water can carry the boat.
这些对我
The
们今天
water
还是
can
具有
also
重大的指导意义
destroy
的。
the boat.
因此呢，儒家主张王道。所谓的王道呢，就是以德行人，以德服人，用自己的道德的力量去征服人。只有这样才是王道。如果呢，以法治、以强力、以军事去征服别人，我们把它叫做霸道，而不是王道。霸道呢，对人的征服是一时的，而王道对人的征服是永久的。
So that is the part of the realm. And because we should propose for those good people to govern the country, and because they are kind, they are benevolent, and people should live in harmony. And if in other words, if you rule by law, you by military force, by various punishment, and then it will become a hegemony, and that hegemony doesn't last long, while the good governance by good people can last long. And the people who win, the emperors or the rulers who win people's heart win the world.
这是我简单的对儒家的思想做的一个介绍。那么简单的我再讲一下，中国古代还有一个重要的一个思想流派，对我们中国人影响巨大的，就是道家的思想。
Okay, that is the Confucianism. And next we are talking a little bit about the other philosophy is Stoicism.
在中国人的眼里啊，在道家的思想里头，最根本的就是道家认为天道自然，所以呢，要做到呢道法自然。
Okay, for Stoicism, and there are also, it's the basic principle, the fundamental concept is Tao follows what is natural. And this is kind of a comic view in
讲道家呢，首先呢，因为道家在中国的思想里头呢是一个非常思辨化的一个理论，我尽可能的用一种简单的方式给大家讲解。
Okay, for Taoism, and it's quite profound and quite hard to understand. So I'll try to use simple words.
道家呢有一个著名的代表人是黄帝，那么黄帝呢，当年曾经是我们国家早期的一个士族领袖，刚开始呢治理国家治理的并不好，他听说呢在甘肃，就是我们的曹老师他的家乡甘肃呢有一个很著名的山叫崆峒山，据说崆峒山上住了一个神仙，他到崆峒山上向这个神仙呢来请教，而这个神仙呢告诉他一句话，他说天不下雨，干嘛要急着让它下？秋天啊，天不到秋天，干嘛急着收获？皇帝呢，终于领会了一个道理吧，就叫天道。
Okay, so I'm going to tell you a story which might help you to have a better understanding of this Taoism. And in Chinese history, there was an emperor, it's Huang Emperor, and one of the earliest emperors in China. And he wants to know how to govern the country. He heard there is a god living in Kongtung Mountain, which is in Gansu province, and that's my hometown. And So he went there and he asked advice from the God as how to govern the country, how to rule the country. And the emperor said, if it is not to rain now, why hurry to get the rain? And if the season is not to the autumn, why do you hurry to go and harvest? You should follow the nature. And so from this, the Huang Emperor understand that we should not do a lot of things to change the world, but rather follow the nature.
几点了？应该几点了？
尽量听就是讲这么多。
但这个老出问题了。
哎，可以，
是不是老出问题？
要有力气，
用点力是吧？好的。好，大家看呀，实际上这里头呢，道家呢，我们先要搞清楚2个字。然后我刚才呢讲儒家的时候呢，就应当给大家讲，在中国啊，我们自身的文化系统里头有2个字，实际上翻译很困难，一个呢就叫天，一个就是道。
Okay, when we are talking about Taoism, there are 2 words. It's actually very hard to translate because Tian literally means sky, but the Tian actually means nature. And the other is Dao, and that's Tao. So what they are trying to follow is here.
刚才曹老师呢翻译天的时候呢说天是 sky， 实际上呢在中国的语言系统里头呢，天它呢起码就有几个意思。第一个意思呢，天有点像上帝，所以是人格之神的意思，说天道无亲就是这个意思。第2个天呢是自然之天 sky， 第3个天呢是人，第3个天呢是性命之天。我们经常讲的死生有命，富贵在天，实际上也体现着天的意思。所以说呢，天在英语系统中呢，好像很难找到很合适的词汇，所以呢，我们就只能用这个字母来音译来体现。
Okay, the reason why we just put Tian, T-I-A-N, Tian is because it's a word hard to translate. While Charles, the interpreter, just now translated as sky, literally. However, in Chinese, this Tian and sky is just one of the meanings. There are several other meanings. And when we are talking about the heaven, we're talking about the emperors. They are also Tian. And the other is also when we are talking about 最后一个天是什么意思？
天还有性命之天。
Okay,
性命啊，人天命。
Okay, the other translation could be destiny. Okay, that 天 can also be translated as destiny, and people are like doomed, destined to become something, and that is also 天。
我们中国人经常说的一句话。对于我们中国人具有道德纪律的一句话，叫做“人在做，天在看”。
Okay, so there is a Chinese saying. We always say, "Whatever you are doing, 天 is watching you." It's like Christians. Whatever you do, God is watching you.
那么道呢，同样具有天的这么一种意思，跟这个有一定关系。同时呢，道呢也可以理解为道路，人的道路，人要走的道路。还有一个理解呢，就是这个天道的最本质的规律。
And the other words is Dao. And this Dao literally can be the path, the road you are walking. It could also means, and 第二个层意思是什么？这个道路是？
道是本质
啊。The incense,
本质和规律
the rules,
老天的本质和规律
the natural rules.
那么道家呢，
So
主要就是在
Taoism
讲老天的本质
are
和规律
talking about the nature
啊。大家看
of，天。
他说呢
As，you
老
can
天呢
see,
日月更替，寒来
And
暑往，老
the
天呢
great Tao
很
is
自然的在
completely
运转。
following which the sun, the most circulated.
第二个
The
呢，
great Tao is namely is constantly nourished
春
all
去秋
things.
来，
And
万事万物，花
say
开花
all
落，
those things,
天
flower
自然的
blooming,
证明真实的存在，
and
这规律
which
真实的存在。
shows the real thing living in this world, in this universe.
同时，
At the same time,
老天呢也
and
让我们
the
万众生
天
灵各得其位，各自成
can
长。所以老
also
天也是无私的，
let us grow naturally,
这就是老天呢所具有的博大的胸怀。
live, grow, and die naturally.
他不需要去增
And
功增名，
There
自然
shouldn't
而
be
然。
any task
我
to
们
be
一直
given.
依照他，他
Everybody
就
should
存在。
follow the natural path.
而人呢，
And
只需要
people
遵循他的本
can
质，遵循
just
他的规律
follow the
就可以了。
incense and follow the rules of the God or that Tian.
这就是
And that
道
is
家一些基本
what
的认
Dao
为。道家就认为
believes.
人
Dao believes that
人顺其自
people
然的最
should
高的境
do
界就叫无
everything
为。
to follow the natural rules.
比如说，
For example,
儒家在治理国家的
and
时候，
while
跟道家治理国家的理
Confucianism
念就有很大的
have
区
different
别。
ideas with Stoicism.
儒家讲仁政，
Uh,
讲究
Ru-
细心的治理
Confucius
国家。
propose the principle
而道
of
家正好
governing
跟他
by
相反。
benevolence,
道家认为
while
啊
Dao
治理国家
believes
顺
that
其自
when
然
you
即
are
可。
ruling the country, you should follow the natural rules. You don't have to do much things. It's a
道家呢
smaller
有
government,
一个思想，
a
实际
bigger
上是
environment.
美国的历届总统
And
都非常推崇备至的。
so every
那么就是
generation
士
is
大
talking
我
about
若
Daoism
烹小鲜。
and saying that governing a big country is like making small dishes.
就像我们煎鱼一样，
It's just like you
把
are
鱼呢放在锅里
cooking
头
a，fish
不能够呢
and you put the
随
fish
时的
into
随
the
时的
pan
煎炒，
and
我们
then
只需
it
要
will
放到里
naturally
头，
become
按照鱼的本性，一点点的烘焙就可以了。烘
it
焙完
will
了
naturally
再翻
become
面
the bride and you don't have to do much
这个国
thing
家就不会乱。
and
治理呢
if you
作为治理者也
you
显
will
得很
mess
简单
around
这种思想呢
and this
是
kind of
道
thinking
家呢，
is
所以呢
what
道家呢
Dao believes
反对各种刑法，
and
反
they
对各种
also
伦理，反对各种道德，只要随其人
they
性。
object to all kind of punishment.
好，所以按照道家的这
So
种思想，
according to
他对做人
Dao's
他就提
philosophy
出来了自己的一些做人的目
and
标。
they also talks about what people should do. 我来，你说下一章，我来翻吧。
好，
看一下。
下一章我看，这个不太给力。好，好，
OK
好，大家看，这个道家呢，
You can say from
这
here
个跟儒家的君子不同，他认
and
为呢
it's different
要做人
from
呢，实际上
the
做
Confucius
不实时的。首
and
先
you，should do
他认为
everything.
呢，道家呢，如果说儒家呢非常注重呢，
If Confucius
所以仁者乐山嘛，儒家非常
and they
非常
talk about
注重山那么多伟岸，
mountains,
而跟
rivers,
而道家呢
while
跟他正好
Daoism
相反，他注重
on
水
the contrary.
在道家认为水
Okay. So remember, we say benevolent people love mountains, and in Daoism believe water because they think they are more wise.
儒家有这么一句话叫上善若水，
And there is a word, the toppest kindness
儒家
of
为什么用
benevolence
水
is
呢？
like water.
他通过水这么一种
Why
自然的
using
这么一种
water?
物质，他发现了
Because
水的
water-
品格跟道家的思想几乎是完全一样
And this
的。
kind
首
of
先，
there is a kind of similarity between Confucianism and Daoism in terms of their understanding of water, because water flows naturally.
首先水呢具有包容
First
之
of
性。
all,
如果说跟石头相比呢，石头是无法包容其他的东西的，而水可以包容一切。第一个呢，水所具有的包容性；第二个呢，水还具有一个品格，就是清淡，没有任何的味道。 而儒家认为呢，这恰恰是人生的一个至高的境界，就知足常乐。人呢要清淡，要寡欲。他认为呢，人生的所有的不满不足都是由欲望所引起的。只有人没有欲望，清淡，过清淡的生活，简易极简的生活，他的人生呢才是圆满。第三个呢，他强调了人生的一个重要的一个思想，叫做柔弱胜刚强。我们中国有句话叫水滴石穿，就水是柔弱的，但是它可以战胜刚强。反过来，坚强的东西是没有办法战胜柔弱的。
Okay, so the water in Chinese philosophy is very important, both in Confucianism and in Taoism, because first of all, water is tolerant. It's not like a stove, and water can be inclusive. And the next, water is light, and there is no so if you drink water, this is different from you drink milk or coffee, and there are some taste, and this is tasteless. And however, and Taoism believe that this is the essence of life. Life should be simple, and we should all live in a simple life without much desire. And if you pour water, pure sugar and coffee and rooibos into the water, and then it becomes different things. And however, the incense is to help you to overcome the thirsty, and that water is already enough. So we should live in a simple life by value the water itself.
道家呢，通过对水的一种深刻的认知，获得了一种人生的一种体验。这种体验呢，
so through this kind of life and have an experience, and people should also be tolerant,
清淡
inclusive,
要谦虚
simple, modest.
比如说
For example,
当这一杯子
when
水的时候
you
满
have
满的
this
时候，
water, when
里
it's
头
full,
就无法再往里面放
and
东
you
西了。
cannot pour
因为
anything
一旦
into
放东
it,
西的话呢，
because
它水
if you
马上就溢出
do
来，
anything inside, the water will spill over.
稍微一放就溢出来。
Okay.
但是呢，如果是半瓶子水呢，
However, if
就可以
it's
往里面
half
不停地放
water,
东西。
and then you can pour a lot of things into it.
所以呢，中国
So
人
in
强调
China, we
一
say
种谦虚的品格，
you should be
始终
very
接
modest,
受外来的东西，
always
接受外
try
来
to
的
absorb anything, to learn from others.
这是中国人做人的基本
And
准则。
that is how Chinese people should behave themselves.
所以说呢，今天我们大多数的中国人都是秉承着这种
So a lot of
意识
Chinese people you will hear when they are talking to each other, they were also talking about always the saying like, if you go to the Chinese families or their homes, you will say Chinese calligraphy. A lot of families, homes, they will put like 上善若水, meaning the topics kindness is like water. So the philosophy has a lot of influence on Chinese.
所以我们中国人呢，做人，我们经常讲做人最高的境界叫做外圆内方。
So the highest way to deal with people is from outside, you are like a round. Okay, so you are round and you are dealing with everybody friendly. And inside, it should be square, determined, sharp.
所以呢，方呢代表什么？代表儒家的思想。儒家呢主张方正的，主张做人的君子的那种做人的那种坚
Okay,
强。
the square represents the Confucianism, the principle of being a gentleman, and there are a lot of requirements for being a gentleman. So that is a square.
但是方呢，意味着有棱角，
round.
棱角呢就意味着有可能去伤害别人或者被伤害。
Okay, but being square have also disadvantages, because if it's a square and then those 4 angles, Without those covers, it could hurt people.
所以呢，儒家呢，同时又强这个我们中国传统文化呢，又把道家的思想又融入了进
So
来。
that's why we integrate Daoism, the culture, round outside
圆就是
this
顺其自然，它就是呢无为的顺其自然的思想。
Okay, so that is follow the way of a round, and then you don't have to do a lot of things, and it will be naturally in harmony.
所以呢，这两个思想呢有机的统一起来了。如果呢光是一
And
个的，
this is a combination of those two
归
kind
原
of
则，
things. If you say too square or it's too round, it's
过
not.
于圆滑，没有原则，我们也不认为。
Yeah, if you are also too round, and the round means smooth, and there is no sharp edges. Okay, well, it is good. However, at the same time, it means you doesn't have principles. Sometimes you have to be hard. Sometimes you have to be sharp. Sometimes you have to say no.
还能给我多长时间？
So how much time does he have?
我这可以讲很长时间。也可以
Because Chinese philosophy, okay, based on its 5,000 years civilization, he can talk forever. 10 minutes 啊，再讲10分钟。
再讲10分钟。好的。那么，我讲第3个问题吧。中国传统的核心精神。
Okay, next I'm going to talk about the
3个大问题。
core value. Here, right? Oh, the fundamental concept of Buddhism.
不要过去了，这个
过去了。
过去了。
过了是吧？
中国佛教思想，反正
哪一个？
往下走吧，往下走，一直往下走。因为这个佛教的思想也太复杂了。
Okay, we'll skip part of Buddhism. We'll come to the part 3, core spirit of traditional Chinese culture.
我讲第3块内容，就是我们中国传统文化的最核心的一些精神。第一个精神呢，就是自强不息的精神。
Okay, the first spirit of unyielding self-improvement.
可能大家也接触到很多的中国人，我不知道大家是种什么样的感受，但是呢，我们的体会是，我们这个民族呢有一个比较独特的一个特点，就是我们这个民族啊是崇尚劳作的，是一个非常强调这个吃苦耐劳的这么一个民族。
Okay, so here we are going to talking about the spirit of Chinese culture. I don't know if you come across Chinese, you sometime make conversations, or you have Chinese friends. What is your feeling about Chinese? But in general, probably you would agree with us that the Chinese people are hard-working people. They are very diligent. Take me as an example. Today is Monday. Yesterday I was working full day. Sunday.
我这个有时候讲课，我一口气可以讲6、7个小时。
And taking Professor Zhang as an example, he's a professor, and standing at the podium, he can talk 6-7 hours without any break.
我们这个民族为什么具有这么一种强烈、坚韧的这么一种吃苦耐劳的精神？
Why do we have this kind of a
我们
hard-working
对老天的
spirit?
信仰。
It's because we believe in Tian. Well, that's God, heaven, sky, combination of everything.
中国呢有一本书，也是我们
China, there is a
中国人的圣经，叫《易经》。
It's Chinese Bible called Yi Jing. Yi Bible. Okay.
易经呢，这个汉字上面是个
That
日，下面是个月。
Jing.
易经这里头没有体现出易经来。
Okay. That Yi Jing. 上面是个
日，下面是个月。让大家看看，下面是个月字。
Okay. I have to write this Chinese character for you to have a look. And this part represents sun. This part represents moon. So it's that Yi Bible is the Bible of sun and the moon. Okay, E. That's the word.
一就是老天的意思，
Okay,
就
that's
是日
basically
月更
mean.
替，寒来暑往
Okay, the,
啊。
the sun rises, the moon goes down, and then the moon come up, the sun goes down, and then the generations shift, and the rivers flow, and that is the nature.
中国人认为老天是造物之祖，老天创造了人，人要秉承老天的这种品格，日月更替，寒来暑往，永不休息。
Okay, this is actually similar to Bible, that there is a God that create this universe and then create all the mountains and move the sun, move the earth, and move the moons, and so this is the nature.
可能有些人认为啊，说中国这种思维方式很奇葩，好像
And-
中国人呢文化有些自虐啊，
And
不知道
people
休
might
息。
think
中国人
that-
从来都是站北劳作的，
Yeah,
不主张休息。
because that universe, that sun goes up and down, the moon is also going up and down, and they are working all the time, and so we should also work all the time. That's how I believe.
实际上，我们这个民族并不是那么的愚蠢 啊。
And the people will think that Chinese are stupid. Why you are working all the time? However, we are not. We
我们的支撑就是呢强烈的忧患意识。中
So-
国人有句老话，
because we have a kind of
人无远虑，必有近忧。
crisis, okay? And we feel that life is short. And if you do not have a long-term plan, and there must be a lot of worries around you.
中国人呢，
And you need to work hard for the future.
他的思维方式
Our way of thinking
与有些民族不一样的地方在于
is，
我们的
different
思维方
from-
式是超前的。比如说，
So-
我们活在今天，我们就要想明天，想后天，再往前想，这是
Okay.
中国人的思维方式。
in Chinese traditional way, we live in today, but we need to prepare for tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, or 20 years later.
那么，为了明天更好的生活，今天
a
如果睡大
better
觉，我
life
们中国人认为是不行的。
For a better life of tomorrow, we
所以，
cannot lie down today.
为了未来的美好的生活，今天
For
人
the
需
future
要不断地努
good
力、
life,
努力再
we
努
have
力
to。work very hard, not only for ourselves, but also for our next generation, for our kids, for our children.
啊，比如说，可能大家都知道，中国人喜欢存钱。实际上，
Yeah.
中国人存钱的这种思维方式，就是我们中国人这种远虑的思维方式，就是为了明天我活得更好，今天呢，我就要存钱，为了明天。
Okay, we have to prepare for the unpredicted tomorrow, because tomorrow anything might happen. So that's why we Chinese like to save. We want to save money into the banks, and so that tomorrow when we need money, we can have that money.
实际上，中国人这个对于自己的子女呢，他敢于付出一切。实际上，这种思维方式也是受这种也是这种思维的影响。我们中国人认为，你看上一辈的人，我一直在努力，我们把最好的留给我们下一代人，下一代人接着留给下一代人。他实际上，他不是把自己的孩子当成另一个个体，而是把他的孩子当成他生命的延续，当成他的明天。
Okay, that kind of idea also extended to save everything for our children, because you will see that we work very hard and we want to leave as much heritage as possible to our children or even grandchildren, because we believe they are the extent of ourselves. And we always live in a kind of a crisis, and we should prepare for that crisis. And we should prepare for the unpredictable future, not even for us, but also for our children.
你再往下翻一个包容精神吧，我给讲一下包容精
Okay,
神。
next we would like to talk about spirit.
啊，这里头没有包容精神，
包容精神啊，
这里头没讲，没有，那就翻，我看没有包容精神。
有 open
有实事求是的精神，
有这个有
放在
开放和包容。
开放对啊，开放包容精神。那么第二个呢，就是中国呢具有强烈的包容和改革包容精神。
Okay, the next is the spirit of openness and inclusiveness.
中国的包容精神呢，来源于我们民族的和的文化。
And this kind of a spirit comes for our river culture.
就像我刚才给大家讲，我们道家呢讲水，水能够包容一切的东西，这就是我们中国人啊，这个从文化根性接受的一种精神。
Okay, like what I'm earlier mentioned that, and water is kind of a spirit of a Chinese culture, and that water itself is inclusive, tolerant.
实际上，我刚才没有给大家呢讲全我们中国的理论方面的。我们除了儒家的思想，这个道家的思想、佛教的思想，我们还有法家的思想，我们还有兵家的思想，还有农家的思想。我们中国古代把它叫做百家争鸣，它实际上就体现了我们中国的一种开放的一种精神。到近现代，我们中国呢出现了思想上的不断的改变。第一次呢，佛教的进入；第二次呢，资产阶级西方文明的进入，包括我们今天啊各种文化的在中国的进入，中国人都是保持着一种开放和包容的精神。
Okay, actually, I should give you a summary of Chinese traditional philosophy. Not only we just mentioned two of them. There are actually more besides what we mentioned: Confucianism, Taoism, and there are also more Marxism, also martialism, and we also have, well, of course, promoting the power. And there are also others like agriculture, like rule of law also. And however, in like about 2,000 years ago, and those schools of philosophy already formed in China, and we called 百家争鸣, meaning debating among 100 variety of principles, philosophies. So what we can say, that is why we say the ocean is vast, for it refuse no rivers. And that's why we advocate openness and inclusiveness.
这个中国的这种包容精神，并不是说我们这个民族啊，道德水平多么高，而是我们的思维方式，我们对事物的认知而形成的自然的结论。比如中国人认为和时生物同则不济，我们中国人为什么讲究和而不同呢？因为我们中国人认为和，什么叫和呢？和就是指不同的事物之间的有机的整合，这就叫和。它可以使事物变化和发展，而相同的事物就无法发展。
Okay, so actually, we also have several kind of, we also are inclusiveness. Speaking of this, we also accept other religions and philosophies to come into China, like the Buddhism is actually from India. And we have this Western civilization from the West. And in China, you know, we also believe Marxism, Leninism, and that is also from West. And traditionally, Chinese believe harmony in diversity. This is actually similar to Africa, right?
这个比如说我们中国人呢有这么一句话，叫做五音相和，美乐生矣。 五味相合，佳肴生韵，就是五个音儿，五个音符不一样，但是有机的统一起来，各种美乐就产生了。五味不一样，有机的整合，各种美味就产生了。这就是中国人所理解的和。而同，大家想一想，同是指的完全相同的事物。如果完全相同的事物，一个音儿兜一辈子也兜不出美妙的音乐，一个味道也不可能整合出美妙的音乐。
Okay, so we have that saying that harmony existing in diversity. And we have a saying that if we have 5 symbols which are different, the musical symbols, while they are different when while they are different, but when they are put in together, it become beautiful music. And the cuisine plays the same role. And if we have different flavors, and then it can become delicious. If you have only one flavor, it's tasteless. And that's explain harmony under diversity.
实际上，这个我们总书记他呢，就把中华民族的这个和的思想发挥到了极致。他提出来了全人类共同价值的理念，而全人类共同价值就是在讲和的理念。他告诉我们，人类对民主、自由、公平、正义的追求是共同的，但是呢，要允许不同的民族、不同的国家，他呢，对于自己的对民主、对自由、对公平、对正义的理解是不一样的。只有大家呢互相尊重，相互之间的以和的理念来进行整合，人类命运共同体才是一种现实的理想。
Okay, so based on those philosophies, and our President Xi Jinping actually proposed the Global Civilization Initiative, and because he believed that there are some common values among human beings, like democracy, freedom, love, and tolerance, inclusiveness. So at the same time, we should also allow different ideas to exist so that we coexist in harmony. And because there are different ways of thinking, different ways of doing things, different culture, different background, and however, all people should live in harmony. And he proposed the principle of shared future of humankind.
对我的要求不到1分钟了，我最后就讲一个也可能是大家关心的问题，就是中国人为什么不信教？
Okay, since I only have 1 last minute, so I'm going to talk about why Chinese people do not have a religion.
中国人呢，对待宗教的态度是尊而不信的，尊而不仰的，就尊重，但是不一定。
Okay, our principle with the religion is that we respect, but we may not necessarily believers.
这是由我们几千年来的这种文化本性所决定的，是由于中国人对人性的理解而造就的。
That is because of our understanding based on those 5,000 years of civilization, and we inherited and we carried out, and those ideas formed us to do it like that.
没有信仰，并不表明我们中国人没有信念啊，没有宗教信仰，并不表明中国人没有信仰。
While we are not religious, it doesn't mean that we do not have beliefs.
在中国人眼里呢，人性，我一开始讲了，人性本善。
And at the very beginning, I told you that we believe that people are born to be kind.
所以呢，中国的文化里面是没有原罪这种概念的。中国人认为呢，人皆可以为尧舜，人都可以成为圣人的。
And so that's why we believe that everybody can become a saint.
但是在现实中，我们确实看
But
到
in reality, we
人性
say
的差异性、各
that
色人等的存在。
different
原因在
people,
什么地方呢？很简单，就是
there are
后代
different
后世
people,
人走的路不一样。
and because
中国
their
有句老话
experience
叫
are
做近
different,
朱者赤，近墨者
and their environment is different. And we have a saying that if you are near to the red part, you become red. And when you are
三字经里面不知道能不能翻译啊，就是人之初，性本善，性相近，习相远。
And there is a saying in our Chinese traditional book, it says that, when we were born to be good, and we have similar characters, and we have similar customers and traditions.
当
However,
人走错了路的时候，那么中国人呢，只有一个办法实现对人的救赎，实际上是自我救赎，通过
So,
学习，通过教育，
when
来
you
达到实
when
现
you
对人的
are
救赎。
growing older, you have different environment, and the different environment have different impact on you. And so if somebody make mistakes on the way, and he should rehabilitate himself, and also via help from others.
所以呢，中国有一句老话叫做“吃得人中苦，方为人上人”，就是这个
And
道理。
we also have a saying that if you work very, very, very hard, and if you work the hardest, and then you have the chance to be the toppest.
在中国人文化根性里头，
And
世界
in
上
our
是没有
nature,
救世主的，救
there is no
自己
savior.
救自己的只有自己。
And we
所以呢，
believe
只有
that
靠自己的力量
God help
才
those
能
who
实
help
现人生的圆满。
themselves.
所以呢，宗教在中国人
So
的
that's why
作为工具化来理解
in China,
啊，就需要的
and
时候呢，我
belief
们以它
is like
来
an
做一种安慰
instrument,，and when it's necessary,
但是它没
they
有作
will
为
go
终极的
to
信仰。
Buddhist temple or go to Confucius temple or their ancestors temple, and it's just for the short need, okay. And but in the root cause, they are not that
但是我想，
religious.
人类向善，人类呢需要
However,
追求幸福
there
生
is
活
a
都一样。
universal value for all humankind, and that we
我们
all
说条条大路通罗马，
think that
实际上
kindness,
就是这个意
we
思。
should propose that concept of kindness. And there is a saying that every road eventually to arrive to Rome.
时间到了，我
Okay,
先
that's-
把我自己讲的
Okay,
啊
thank
先
you
简
very
单说
much
一点。
because
下
that's
下面
time.
如果有时间，咱们做
And
一个
if you have any
讨论。
questions, then maybe we can also answer. 如果有问题的话，我提问一下。
哎，好的。
Okay,
啊
any
你要有提
questions?
问的嗯
I think I'll also need a translator as a share for me. Thank you very much, Prof. Zhang Jun. You may have a seat. And then,
好好的。
and thank you very much for this interesting lecture that you have delivered. I don't think this needs translation. I can translate to yes to Prof. Many of us may be asking ourselves, why civilization, why tradition, why culture in a space of public service and public governance? But the reality is that, like we did during the opening and welcome, that the world has largely developed based on a single culture or single civilization, which is mostly a Western culture and Western civilization. And President Xi Jinping has introduced what we call the Global Civilization Initiative, as Prof. Zhang Jun mentioned. The Global Civilization Initiative, colleague, says, let us embrace different knowledge, different culture, and different ways of governance, because there's no single way of governing, and there's no single way of knowing, there's no single way of learning. The coat of arms of South Africa, similar to what Chinese wisdom says, is unity in diversity. And that is what we are trying to do. This unity in diversity has led to what we've woven into the Batu-Bill principles, which seeks to govern our public sector discourse. So with those few words, colleagues, I'd like to thank Prof. Jan for that lecture. And I'd like now to call on Mr. Victor Tarache, the Director General of the Department of Tourism to give a response to this lecture on the diversity of civilizations. DG, floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, man. Good afternoon, Prof. Good afternoon. Let me recognize the acting principal, Mrs. Laken, and Prof, and appreciate the sharing of the words of wisdom coming from their ways of life. I was listening quite attentively, and what was quite interesting for me was the striking similarities across different cultures and different civilizations. And what was really more intriguing was these cultures are practiced thousands and thousands of miles away from each other, but there is just so much striking similarities that you then start asking yourself, isn't this just perhaps the ways of the universe? That all of these things would really ultimately just resemble one another. I'm going to say a few things. I don't intend to directly respond to the lecture, but perhaps to complement it by infusing African practices and how these African practices have some sort of relationship with what we see in the world today and what we see also within our own environment. Up front, I would like to just clearly indicate that when you look at the issue of ethics and ethical and capable developmental state, and you take the lecture that has just been delivered by Prof, the two words, capability as well as ethics, they will remain a constant. They will remain a constant. There could be all this variability of different cultures that you're going to infuse, but ethics and capability will remain some sort of a constant. But the ethics that you practice in your respective environments are much more influenced by the cultural paradigm that you find yourself in. So what is deemed to be ethical here may not necessarily be what is deemed to be ethical even just 2,000 kilometers away in Central Africa. Would also perhaps not be the same thing that is deemed to be ethical in Beijing, and might not even be the thing that is deemed to be ethical in the Western world. So the fundamental, which is the cultural paradigm within which you find yourself, is what actually informs what will be your ethical dimension. And I'm raising this because often we draw from different other dimensions of what is deemed to be ethical. We then go and define our codes of ethics on the basis of that. But when you bring it on the ground, it actually does not relate at all to the realities within the environment that you actually find yourself. Capability too. It comes from What do you want to achieve? So your aspirations will determine your capability.
我们
And you would need to be able to move level to level on the basis of what precisely do you want to achieve.
最后想
So if you go back and you ask yourself,
生活要怎样的终点
in 1994,
1994年，
the capabilities that we wanted
我们那个时候想要的能力
was the capability to be able to design
设
a system of governance that would be able to transition us from apartheid
帮助我们
to
的
democracy.
转型民主转
That meant we needed people that would be able to put institutions in place.
有一些能够
And that we did,
上
and we did it very well.
这些国策的
But beyond that particular period,
超过了那个阶段
we find ourselves today in a world where we're talking about different types of transitions that are taking place at the same time. Whether you're talking about transition on the energy front,
包括说在这个
whether you're talking about transitions in terms of material and all those kinds of things,
物质的
or whether you're talking about transition in the context of digital,
这个数字化
that requires a totally different set
这个
of
跟原来时代完
capabilities,
全不一样
completely different set of capabilities, which means
这就意味着
that those who've got the responsibility to assist us with developing that particular capability,
发展阶
to move us to
力
the new
要
form
要
of
掌握更多
governance
的工
towards
具
that
来
developmental
实
state
现在
should be conscious of that particular change,
我们
but also understand the cultural paradigm we find ourselves in and whether we will be able
才能
to
说
transition to that on the basis of the
转
cultural
型
paradigm that we
到
find ourselves
下
in.
一个新的时代
You know, African
知道非洲
cultures
非洲的文化
have gone through a lot
经历
of changes.
很多次的变
Some of those changes were changes that were
是
out of necessity.
是没必要
Some were changes that were
有
imposed
些呢是处于我们必须要的
to the extent that today
那么到现在
you find quite a lot of
有很多
variable type of
Yeah.
cultures within the same environment.
在同样的环境下
And unfortunately, some of them we do not understand.
遗憾的是我们其实对有些还不理解
And part of the reason why we do not understand those is because
因为
the mode of passing on those cultures had been interrupted.
我们在文化的传承的过程
In the main,
受
these
到了
cultures
一些中
would
断
be passed on
或者是阻碍
from one generation to the
Exact.
next,
到另外
and they would not necessarily be passed on through written literature and so on, but they would actually be passed on through a mode of either tales
能是通过
and those
吸
kinds of
纳
things.
的变化之后的这种文化的传递，
They would largely be passed on from
可能
not from a parent to the child.
不是从父女 传递儿女，
Across all the African
是
philosophies that you
来
can
自比
go
方说
through, you
非
would
洲
not
各种各
find
样的哲
a
学
direct
并没有发现这个
knowledge type
直接的
relationship between
知识
a
转
parent
承
and a
来
child.
自
It
于
didn't exist.
父业继承或者是后代，
So what used to happen is that
所以过去
the grandparents
他们的爷爷
were the custodians of that knowledge.
他们的监护人也好，或者是
They were the custodians of the love. And they would then pass on this love to their grandchildren.
但是他们也会传递。
The father and the mother were there to maintain strict discipline.
给他们有
They are the ones who've got the right to reprimand you. They are the ones who could use the rod and stuff like that. But
他们给你
they would always also be reprimanded by their own parents to say, you got to stop here. You can't go beyond this. Stop here now. If you touch this person, meaning the grandchild, you are touching me. And that's what most of our grandmothers would say. But in the process, they would sit you down. They would provide you with whatever delicacy of the season, food delicacy of the season, whether it's a season for a fruit, a season for a maize or nuts or whatever. They would have that, and they would then make sure that you sit next to them. They feed you that whilst they're actually telling you all these tales. And as you get those tales, there was something that was actually being formed, and you were actually beginning to understand your surrounds a lot better, relating whatever you're seeing to what you have actually been told. But when you went to school, you found yourself in a totally different environment. Your aunt, whom at home you would actually have to kneel before her to greet. You get to school, you find that that aunt is the teacher. She insists that you must actually stand and look at her in the eye and actually say, "Good morning, ma'am." This is your aunt, your father's own sister. And then you are able to do that. You stand up, you look at her, you say, "Good morning, ma'am." She claps her hands and she says, "Well done." She has just undone 7 years of education that you received at home. Now, language becomes the most critical thing in this thing that I'm talking about. And the very fact that language was the first thing to be removed completely from our education system. So that you go into the classroom, you sit in the classroom, you learn another 7 years of trying to speak like where I'm speaking now. That becomes a bigger problem. Because by the time I actually find out what I'm trying to learn in terms of the actual substance of what I'm supposed to learn, I've wasted 7, 8 years on trying to grasp the language. But if I had gone into a classroom and the language I had already perfected by the time I went into the classroom was continued, I'm quite sure most of us would probably be doing some very sophisticated thing in life. But we're not able to do that because of design. So it means we do need to consciously work in reverse and ensure that there is some sort of reverse culturalization of ourselves. And if we don't do that, it means we will continue with what we are doing and think that that which we're trying to do is actually going to take us somewhere else. Indirectly, Prof speaks of diversity and the need for us to embrace diversity. And I totally agree with that. What we do not need to do in that process is to put one aside and take the other and perpetually be in this singularity mode, and we think we are actually bringing in diversity. We need to look at what is good from others and borrow from that and infuse that into what we have, which is our own. The fundamentals should not change, but as we do that, we would then be in a position to build a sense of resilience in our systems. We will never have resilience if we have got a singularity type of approach in what we do. So you all know about this person who said that the whole purpose of education is to ensure that ultimately the mirrors that we see in front of us actually become glasses. And I got that message from prophets who were going through this. And when you see them as glasses, it means now you can see through the world. You are now beyond that opaque sort of view, but the sense of self also begins to disappear, because what you're seeing on the other side is not the image of yourself which you want to indulge on, which doesn't take us anywhere. There's a sense of pursuit of human prosperity almost across the cultures, even the three philosophical perspectives that were shared by Prof. We pick up that. But it's something that we really need to reflect on as Africans. And that's the question of when you are building relationships, all forms of relationships are based on trust, all of them. The minute the trust is broken, whichever way, there is less and less chance that you will be able to sustain that particular relationship. And as Africans, who at the core of our existence, it has always been about openness. And in that openness, we went through different levels of betrayals. Different levels of betrayals. Whether we're talking about slavery, which was enabled by the levels of trust that existed. Whether we're talking about colonialism, whether we are talking about apartheid, all of these things have left us with a degree of mistrust. They've left us with a degree of mistrust, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I would say it's closer to what the Russians would say, trust but verify. It's not necessarily a bad thing. What it says is that as we move forward, we're informed by all of our experiences, all of them, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Every experience we have gone through has informed who we are and where we are as well. So it then says, as we then plan for tomorrow, as we plan for that future, we have got to make sure that we take all those experiences, integrate those experiences into our planning processes going forward. And ultimately, that would then enable us to stand as equals and to embrace the diversity that comes with the understanding of the experiences that we've had. This applies to everything. I mean, if you look at, I was very happy that Prof went as far as indicating that within the context of the Chinese way of life, there's diversity that is embraced, and that diversity also is embraced even in their economic system. And that's why they talk about their system with Chinese characteristics. Where I'm going with this is that if we revive through that reverse culturalization, if we revive our cultures, if we ensure that the next generation is able to stand on the truth And if we make sure that beyond the various relationships that we form, at the core of those relationships, they are informed by understanding of who we are and what we want to do. Prof talks about hard work. All of us here would probably remember our grandparents, particularly our grandmothers, because the grandfathers, unfortunately, they had been taken away from their places of residence and so on. Their pride in owning livestock and all that didn't exist anymore. But our grandparents would go to the field with a hand hoe, and they would spend literally the whole day there. The whole day. Just have some water there, and they would have something packaged there a little bit for their lunch. So, but they would go there and do what they're supposed to do the whole day. And that's why they didn't have money, but there was no malnutrition. There was no malnutrition. There was food security throughout. There was food security throughout. And they were working the land. Now, that culture, it's a culture that each and every one of us grew up with. Most people that are at least, I would say, maybe 45 and above, but I wanted to say 50 and above. Most people that are at that sort of age would have experienced what I'm talking about. Particularly those that would have come from the countryside, in the villages, and so you would have actually experienced all of these things that I'm talking about. Now, what happened? How did we lose it? Pre-1994, most people who today are in their 40s or even in their 50s would have experienced some sort of an equivalence of what the Western world would call child labor. Not because somebody forced you to do this or forced you to do that, but you worked and you earned something. And when you were doing that, you were not doing it as this is some labor that you're supposed to go through and stuff like that. But it taught us, in my case, I used to go with my uncle and would build people's randavels. Put the thatch, my uncle would get a thatch and would pull something and say, okay, you'll sort yourself out. And I'm raising this because those basics were actually things that taught us work ethic, that taught us understanding how you should actually go about earning a living and stuff like that. And at no point would they actually get to a point where they would say, oh, here is 2 hectares, you got to go and plow this whole thing. They would never do that. And that was part of our own culture. Now we have actually gotten to a point where some amongst us may not even know that groundnuts are planted and you pull them from the ground. They are from a supermarket. So this is part of basics that we learn throughout. Actually reach a certain age, everything completely changes. We've actually urbanized ourselves. We've decided that if you're going to slaughter something in the backyard, SPCA is going to come in. You're going to be in very serious trouble and so on. Don't tell anybody that perhaps you do worship, but just doesn't mean that you go to church and so on, because you're going to look barbaric and stuff like that. That's when we have lost it all. So at least our generation now could conscientize our children And unfortunately, by the time the grandchildren come, we may not have enough time for us to be able to do those things. The nuclear family used to be, it didn't exist. We didn't know about this thing. But today is mom, dad, 2 kids. The grandparents, well, we will see them around Christmas time. It's too far for them to drive here, or, you know, just it's okay. It means the children that I was talking about have no contact, zero, with the grandchildren. And we have been now, you know, taken over by a particular culture, and that's what we are passing on to the children. A responsibility we never had. But now we've taken that responsibility ourselves. We pass it on to the children. And it's not even a proper passing of whatever it may be, because we are basically just passing on a toxic environment to them. Leave in the morning, go to the office, deal with the paperwork, come back in the evening, eat, go to sleep. Some of them, they will watch Netflix in their rooms. Don't even have like time together that you would go and sit around the table and eat, or time together and sit around the lounge and watch TV together and discuss whatever you are seeing. Most of us don't even know our children. We don't even know. We see them sometimes over weekend, sometimes when we go to church and those kinds of things. That's the culture we are bringing. So don't be surprised when they come here and they are supposed to start working with others and they are unable to do that because they have never interacted with anybody. They've never interacted with anybody. Theirs is to just, we call them couch potatoes. So those are some of the most basic things. We see people doing ancestral worship, and then we have got views that we then transmit to the children. And after we have actually done that, we never take the moment when they are old enough to go back to them and say, this is the reason why I did what I did at a particular time. And this is what it actually is. I refuse to accept that Africans were heathens. I refuse to accept that. And I will tell you why I'm saying I refuse to accept that. Because when you look at when did we actually receive the various other religions, Islam, Christianity, and so on. It must have been around, I would say, around the 15th century. Some sort of interaction with that around then. But in the case, for instance, of South Africa, it would definitely have been after 1652. It would definitely have been. Are we saying those ancestors were horrible beings? All of them. Just, it cannot be. It's not possible. It's not possible. So it starts with our own mind. It starts with the literature that we read, what we feed ourselves. So if I go and read the Uncle Ngungi and decolonization of the mind and so on, and you start understanding exactly what has actually happened when the people would rise to power during the era of liberation, would be the people that could speak English through their noses better than everybody else. And those that would actually be on the margins, but they could not speak English like the rest, it did not matter what sort of brilliant ideas they were bringing to the table. And that was already denouncing the language itself. And once that was successful, the rest then, it means you will not have literature you have written for yourself. Some words you will not be able to clearly spell them and say this is what it is, or even the meaning of that. So you are limited in the manner in which you are actually going to express yourself or pass on the future messages to the others. So those are some of the things that, when we look at those things today, we say to ourselves, you know, the youth that were dealing with the feast must fall and so on, part of their agenda was decolonization of the education system. We have not necessarily gotten to that. We have not necessarily achieved that. But for me, what really pleased me was these kids are talking about decolonizing the mind. I mean, that was totally different. And it was for the very first time that it came that strongly. Even in our time at varsity, we never really got as close to that. We talked about Afrocentrism and all that stuff, but we never got to this, never. So what then do we do? They are ready to actually be prepared for that reverse culturalization. How do we then make sure that we get into that environment and they then begin to understand? And also to document some of these things. There are people that understand these things far much better than here, all of us. Those people would be able to assist us in making sure that we document some of those things and understand them better. And it's not about religion. It's not about religion. It's about a way of life. I would never speak to an elder standing up. It's as simple as that. I would never eat from my father's plate. He would have his plate and that plate would be respected. If he's not around for a year, it's okay, but the plate will stay there. It belongs to him. Nobody's going to touch it. And those basics were actually grounding one. You understood. When you come to work and they say, no, that is the minister's chair. You're not going to ask questions. Why should the minister have his own chair? When you've got a plate at home, which sits there for a year and nobody touches it because it belongs to someone who is in a particular authority level. So those are the kinds of things I would say, colleagues, we really need to infuse as we go forward. Now, I wish to conclude so that you will have enough time for your questions as well, by emphasizing this issue about nature. And then Prof spoke about nature quite a lot, especially when he was talking about Taoism. If you take the analogy of the ocean, and that the ocean is inclusive and the ocean takes all the rivers, it flows in, it flows in. You can see that picture here. But what you should then say to yourself is, when the river has got plastics and all sorts of other toxics that are going in there, which are not natural, the ocean doesn't take it. That's why you see it floating all over. And it is also not good for the inhabitants of the ocean. So we must, if we're embracing that we are an ocean, we must then embrace that ocean analogy with the understanding that there are things that the ocean tolerates, there are things that the ocean never will tolerate. I want to stop here. And I agree we must be square and round, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, and thank you for the lecture.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, DG, for such an insightful response and bring it down to our context. I would like to now take comments and questions. I was told by colleagues there monitoring the online platform that there are no comments or questions. As the situation changes, still the same. Only one question. No question. Only one question. Okay, we'll take that question. We'll start with the colleagues that are here with us here in Pretoria physically. Do you have any questions or comments that side? While you're still thinking about the questions and comments, also to bring back the message of civilization and culture and tradition in governance, President Xi also reminds us that every country's governance system should be based on the traditions, the culture, and the context of that particular country, and that no country should copy the Chinese system because each country is different, has its own characteristics. But culture is an important element that should be woven into the governance system of any country for that country to develop. Do we have any questions or comments, this side, colleagues? I do not see any questions or comments from colleagues on this side and on that side. Okay, in the absence of questions and comments, colleagues, let us take the question from the online platform. Okay, it is projected there.
中国文化呢是以这个集体为中心的，然后拥抱这种集体价值观或者原则，而西方文化拥抱的是个性的这种以个人主义为主的。那么这种文化呢是怎么样在哪一种程度上可以共存，尤其是考虑到这个知识分享，而尤其是我们在这个让这个世界能变得更加美好的这样的一个情况下，在一方面要知识分享，一方面呢还不能破坏或者因为一方面是西方的这个个体和这个东方的这个集体，然后在这样一个世界下如何来进行共存，而不至于造成冲突那么这个超级大国的这种概念呢，是不是对这个文化的共存产生什么样的影响？然后呢，那么这种超级大国的这种现象，是不是对这种文化的和平共存会带来什么样的影响？会不会这个破坏这个基础？就是在中国，比方说中国和美国之间形成一些，比方说这个资本和基础设施的影响，怎么样？还有 lastly， 它这是一系列的问题。然后最后呢，他讲到就是说，如何让中国和美国呢能够有一种 animosity， 就是你认为中国和美国造成这种敌意的原因是什么
？Yeah, over to you, Prof.
It's a layers.
Yeah, all right.
好，完成了。好，感谢这位先生的提问。这里头呢，涉及了不光是
这个有政治上的问题，不光是有文化方面的问题，还有一些对现实生活的一些思考。首先呢，第一个问题呢，他谈到了刚才我说的中国文化呢，从文化传统上来说，它是主张集体主义的，主张群体本位的。西方呢，它呢具有个人的价值观的这么一种特点。实际上，文化，我们按照文化学的理解呢，文化即人化，就是呢人们的生活，人们的生活的积累、积淀、固化而形成的东西。所以呢，文化的存在本身都是有它存在的基础的。它不是呢凭空的。西方的文化有它的存在的基础，中国的文化有它存在的基础。那么，并不表明这两种文化之间就不能够共融。不光是这两种文化，其他的文化之间，它都存在着共融的。它们共融的基础呢，实际上就是我们呢社会交往，大家的交往越来的越密切化，我们呢会互相的取长补短。这样子的话呢，用我们中国的一句老话呢，叫做各美其美。只有真正的做到了各美其美，才能够美美与共，才能够天下大同。这是我回答的第一个问题。
Okay, thank you very much for that question. It's actually imply a lot of things which is related not only to culture but also political and reality and quite sensitive topics. However, I would like to answer from the perspective of culture. And the Chinese, you are rightly pointed out, and that this in Western, it's more individual centered, while in China more collective centered. And however, when we are talking about the culture is, we are talking about the people. And because culture is a accumulation of human beings' experiences, and it's lasted for many years, and then it's become a fixed tradition or kind of a customer. And when this kind of customer or culture exists, it has the ground to exist. So that's why Chinese have Chinese culture, Western have Western culture, and Western culture is also according to their foundation. But of course, there are reasons and ground for each culture to exist at the same time, what we call coexistence. And this coexistence is justified. So there are, with the development of the society and with the changing world, and we actually found more foundations to coexist. We Chinese have a saying that we beautify our culture and we recognize our culture, and we very value those excellent part of our culture, yet at the same time we also recognize the beauty of other cultures. And it is based on this kind of respecting each other that the coexistence in diversity can be realized. That's the first part.
好，我们习近平同志呢，习近平总书记啊，曾经有一个非常生动的一段话，我觉着呢，对于我们呢各自发展自己国家的民族文化呢， 有很强的指导意义。他说的很生动，他说鞋子合适不合适，只有穿上才知道。也就是说呢，我们每一个民族、每一个国家呢，都有适合自己发展的、自己脚丫的符合自己发展的那么一种文化道路。不可能，也不能，也不应当接受别人的与自己的脚丫不合适的那些号码。我们还是呢，这个走自己的发展的道路。这样子的话呢，我们的文化才是健康的。
Okay, our president and also General Secretary of CPC once pointed out vividly about the different paths and different culture. And I would like to say that what he said, and he said, whether the shoes fit your feet or not, only you yourself know your size and whether the shoes are comfortable or not. So you shouldn't choose shoes for others. And likewise, we have the right to choose our path for our culture, for our construction. And you also have your choice to choose your way of your path, because there is no such thing of one size fits all.
刚才呢，我们这位学员提到了超级大国这个概念。超级大国呢，我的理解它是个政治概念。文化呢，应当说是，不强调大小的，文化更多的是强调的是好和坏。对于我们好的文化，我们就坚持，不因为它大，不因它小，对我们不好的，我们呢就必须呢要摒弃它。所以说呢，文化它是一个国家的生存之基。我们只有呢尊重自己的文化，尊重自己的发展道路，我们的发展呢才是健康的。
Okay, just now in that question, and he mentioned superpower. And my understanding that superpower is a political idea. It does not fit in the cultural category. And for cultural, we do not say which culture is super good and which culture is inferior. And each culture might have something which we can absorb. And while maybe some elements which are not good for us, even from our own traditional culture, and which does not fit the time, and maybe we should also abandon that part which does not go with the current time. And culture is a kind of a thing which determine the way of life, or in other words, the way of life also determines the culture. So whatever it is that we should promote the healthy culture.
我非常同意刚才我们董事长刚才讲的，文化呢必须呢要建立在开放包容这么一种基本的框架之下。我们文化呢，它的本质是相互包容互鉴的，而不是呢相互的冲突、相互对立的。那么只有在包容中，只有在开放中，文化才会发展。这是文化的外部环境。那么从文化的内部要求来说，文化呢，任何的文化呢，它都不能够静止的来看待的。文化的发展实际上要有一个动态的过程。习近平总书记对中华优秀传统文化提出来了两个结合的问题，提出来了两个转换的问题。一个呢就是创造性的转换，一个是创新性发展。是要坚持呢创造性转换和创新性发展，文化呢本身才是有活力的，才是呢真正的 哎，在这两个基础上，我们才能够真正做到不忘本来，面向未来，哎，吸收外来，面向未来。
Okay, so the DG just mentioned that we should also promote the culture of openness and inclusiveness. And I think this is the idea we share with the also African culture and unity in diversity. And also the culture should be dynamic. And our President Xi Jinping pointed out that for any good culture to be carried forward, there are two elements. And one is to carry on innovatively, and the other is to try to use creative way to realize the cultural transformation, and so that this kind of culture can become dynamic and become a healthy progress and process. Thank you very much. I hope that answered the question.
Thank you very much, Prof, and thank you, Charles, for the translation. I would like to now call on DDG Lakalakaunt and Acting Principal to come and give us some closing remarks. DDG and Acting Principal, the floor is yours.
Thank you. We've come to the end of a very enlightening day and discussion based on the lecture from our honored guest, the Vice President of the Beijing Beijing Administration Institute, Prof. Zhang Jun, as well as the response from the Director General of the Department of Tourism, Mr. Victor Taraga. It's been a very informative session and a very enlightening session indeed. You know, we have, Prof, you have answered something that I've been wondering about, and probably many in the world were wondering about, how China managed to build a hospital in 10 days during the COVID, at the start of the COVID pandemic, a hospital with 30 isolation units, 2 floors, serving 1,000 people. So it tells us that those philosophical aspects that you were telling us about, those principles inform the way the Chinese people run their country, the way they run their own lives. So it shows the importance of the cultural disposition to the manner in which we either become an enterprising nation or we become a struggling nation. So it's highly, highly informative indeed. And you reminded us as well of the centrality of emphasizing the moral fiber in everything that we do. For example, the aspect that 2 aspects of a human in 2 aspects, the moral and the physical. I was quite fascinated by the fact that the Chinese, there's a philosophical disposition says the moral is higher than the physical, which means once you lose your moral fiber, you are as good as dead. You are a shell. So that for me was very interesting, because here at the NSG, we run a course on ethics in the public service. And DG also, as you have heard mentioned, the apex priority of this government, which is to build an ethical, developmental, and capable state. So for us, it's that ethical composition of a human being, that which defines who you are as a person, is what we are trying to inculcate amongst public servants. That it's important how you view yourself first, your own moral integrity. It informs how you are going to serve citizens and put them first. So we found that very, very, very interesting. Also, those values that you reminded us, love, loyalty, forgiveness, respect, manners, and that aspect that says strong individuals build strong families, solid communities, solid nations, and therefore solid states. But I also found that as DG said, there's a lot of similarities between the philosophical disposition in China and the philosophies that you were outlining, and our own Ubuntu South Africa has similar culture that which DG spoke about, the need for reverse culturalization, because we realize there are so many similarities between what you were telling us and what we feel we may have lost as we built a new society, like the examples of how nuclear families now, 2 parents, 2 kids, hardworking parents, no time to impart all these values to children, are perhaps building a society that we do not want to be. So how do we reverse that and then go back? So you've given us food for thought with regards to how we go back and build those children with manners, with love, with compassion, loyalty, forgiveness, and all those values that build stronger families, stronger nations, and stronger states. And also we learned a lot on the aspect of leadership, where you spoke about putting people first, which we also have in our own situation. We call it Batupili, putting first in everything we do. You said an important point, the people are above the emperor. So the people come first, which is a good lesson in leadership. And also compassionate leadership, the point that rulers who win people's hearts rule the world. You can't rule the world if your own people do not believe in you as a leader. So that is that is food for thought and quite a meaty takeaway for me from this discussion. But most importantly, it's clear that the civilizations, when it comes to human behavior, there are so many similarities. There's a lot we can learn from each other, from both, whether it's African traditional society or Chinese culture. We just need to rebuild it and then build a better world that we all want to be. So it has been indeed a very, very fruitful discussion for the day. So we want to thank you. In fact, I'm fascinated by the concept of the river, the sea. Beijing being so it includes the idea of inclusiveness and embracing diversity, to say that Beijing is an ocean that takes every river. And DG sort of with that curveball saying, no, but the ocean cleanses itself too. It throws away the plastic and everything that it doesn't want. So it's a lesson for us to say, perhaps when we adopt other cultures, we become inclusive and embrace diversity. Let us remember those plastics and all the rubble that we must throw away and not take everything. Perhaps we may have taken everything as South Africa while trying to be relevant, I suppose, and be so diverse that we may have lost that moral fiber. Matiba used to call it the RDP of the soul. So it's called reconstruction and development of the soul. So, Prof, you reminded us that perhaps we need to revisit that debate of moral regeneration, rebuilding the soul, and then rebuilding stronger families, stronger societies, and therefore a stronger country. So we thank you very much for making the trip to South Africa. We look forward to even stronger cooperation between the two institutions, the BAI and the NSG. Already we can see a lot that we can take. We are happy that we are an expert in this field, because we see a lot we can learn from you in some of our courses, like, as I said, ethics in the public service, also our courses on the Constitution and leadership, because compassionate leadership is what we should be investing in. And we thank you, DG. We know you are very busy. This is actually a very busy period for you in the tourism space. We chose the right DG here, Prof, to come and respond to you. The DG, the department that is responsible for people-to-people interaction. So that's why his input and his response has been so relevant. And thanking all our colleagues for having made the time to be part of this lecture, both here and online. Your being here has made this very worthwhile. And with Prof, thank you. And we look forward to further engagements between the two institutions as we go forward. Over to you, Bogadi, to dismiss your class.
谢院长， 你讲的非常好。
All right, thank you, colleagues, the ones on the virtual platform and the ones that are with us here. The DDG and acting principal has given me permission to dismiss the class. So enjoy your festive. It has been a great pleasure to have you, colleagues, the ones that join us on the online platform and the ones that are here throughout the year in various master classes and various initiatives of the NSG. We thank you for choosing the NSG, and on behalf of the acting principal, also like to extend a happy festive season to you and your families, and hope to see you again next year. Thank you very much.
谢谢 ，Thank you，
不客气。
好棒，谢谢，你也讲的非常的好，你讲的非常的好。
Thank you very much for your wonderful speech.
Thank you.
非常感谢。
欢迎您有机会呢到我们北京市委党校。
If you have a chance, it's our institute.
One day.
好的，
Thank you.